She sends baby's prescription to Mafia boss by mistake. Minutes later, he says, "Doctor's coming." The stale, 3 a.m. air of the apartment felt pasted to Camila Reyes's skin. It was a mix of steamed milk from the diner, old pipes, and the faint, sweet, sour scent of a sick baby. She peeled off her polyester uniform, the name Camila stitched in red over her heart, and let it fall to the floor. Exhaustion was a physical weight, a heavy coat she could not remove. Every joint in her body ached, a sharp complaint from the 8-hour night shift she had just finished, which had been preceded by a 6-hour day shift at a coffee shop downtown, in the corner, in a crib that had been bought second-hand and repaired with wood glue. Her son Noah let out a thin, wet cough that tore her in two. He was 8 months old, and for 6 of those months, he had been struggling. His lungs were weak, the doctors said. A chronic condition that required a special, terrifyingly expensive nebulizer and a prescription she could not pronounce. And he was getting worse. His skin felt too warm, his breathing too shallow. The panic, always simmering just below the surface of her fatigue, began to boil. She had to get the refill. Her last vial was empty. Camila grabbed her phone. The screen fractured in a spiderweb pattern. She ignored the peeling paint on the walls, the single lamp that flickered, the stack of final notice bills on the kitchen counter. Her entire world was a tiny, feverish boy in a second-hand crib. She dialed the 24-hour pharmacy, her fingers clumsy. The automated greeting was a tinny, cheerful insult. She pressed 3 for the pharmacy, then 1 for refill status, and waited through 10 minutes of hold music that sounded like a dying carnival. Finally, a tired voice. "Pharmacy, this is Greg." "Hi," Camila said, her voice rough from disuse and near panic. "I'm calling to refill a prescription for Noah Reyes, Reyes." She heard typing, a long, agonizing pause. "Yeah, I see the request here from Dr. Ramirez. Looks like we ran it, but the insurance rejected the claim." Camila's stomach hollowed out. "Not again, not now." "What? No, that has to be a mistake. We have state aid. It's supposed to cover it. It covered it last month." "Ma'am, I don't know what to tell you," Greg said, his boredom a slap in the face. "The copay is coming up as $650. The system says the deductible wasn't met. You'll have to call your provider in the morning. They open at 8. "In the morning?" she whispered, looking at Noah, who had started to whimper. "He can't wait until the morning. He needs it now. Please, can't you just, I don't know, give me an emergency 3-day supply? I can pay you on Friday. I get paid Friday." "We can't release medication without payment. It's policy. You need to call your provider." The line clicked. He had hung up on her. Tears of pure, hot rage blurred her vision. She was failing. She was working 2 jobs. She was doing everything they told her to do, and her son was sick because a computer said no. She would not let this happen. Her only other hope was Dr. Ramirez, the overworked, kind-hearted physician at the free clinic who had first diagnosed Noah. He had given her his personal number once, for emergencies. "Only if you're desperate, Camila," he had said. His eyes kind. She was desperate. She opened a new text message. Her thumbs flew, the words tumbling out in a torrent of fear and frustration. "Dr. Ramirez, it's Camila Reyes, Noah's mom. The pharmacy is refusing his refill. They said insurance. I don't know what to do. He's coughing again and his fever is back. I'm scared. He can't wait until morning. Please. I don't know who else to call. Can you help me? Please." She typed in the number she had memorized, the one scrawled on a wrinkled business card in her wallet. She hit send. Her entire soul focused on that tiny digital arrow, praying for it to reach the one man who might help her. She had mistyped the last digit. Across the city of Lorenzo Heights, in a penthouse suite hidden from the street by smoked glass and private elevators. The message arrived with a discreet vibration. The phone was a simple, featureless black slab, a burner. It sat on the polished mahogany of a poker table, next to a stack of black chips worth more than Camila's apartment building. The air smelled of expensive whiskey and faint, high-grade cigar smoke. Dante Moretti glanced at the screen. He was not expecting a message. No one had this number except for 5 people, and none of them would ever text him. They would call. His game paused. The 3 men at the table with him, his oldest friend and consigliere Leo, his top enforcer Marco, and a rival boss he was systematically bankrupting, watched him. In Dante's world, a man checking a text at a high-stakes table was a sign of weakness, or a sign that something very serious was happening. With Dante, it was always the latter. He picked up the phone. His eyes scanned the message. His face an impassive mask. Leo, watching him, saw a muscle in Dante's jaw tighten. That was the only tell. Dr. Ramirez, it's Camila Reyes. He read the whole thing. The raw, unfiltered desperation, the fear for a child. It was a language he understood, though he had not heard it in a very long time. It was a prayer sent to the wrong God. Any other man would have deleted it. A wrong number, a distraction. But Dante's mind worked differently. He saw the world in threads, and this one had just landed in his lap. A woman named Camila, a sick baby named Noah, a pharmacy that said no. He thought, for a fleeting second, of a small, cold room over 20 years ago, of his own baby sister, her breathing shallow, and a doctor who had demanded cash on the table before he would even look at her. Cash they had not had. Dante placed the phone face down. He pushed a stack of chips into the center of the table. "I'm out," he said, his voice a low rumble. The rival boss looked confused. "You're folding? You've got the best hand." Dante stood, straightening the cuffs of his bespoke suit. "I have business. Leo, you know what to do." He walked from the smoky room onto a vast, wind-swept balcony. The city lights of Lorenzo Heights glittered below him like a diamond spill. He pulled out his real phone, the one that ran his life, and dialed a number from memory. It rang once. "Dante?" The voice on the other end was alert, professional. "Dr. Alessi, I have a situation," Dante said, his voice clipped. "All business. A mother and a sick child. The prescription is for a pediatric respiratory inhalant. I'm sending you an address in the Narrows and the pharmacy's details. I want you to go to the pharmacy, acquire the medication, pay whatever they're asking, and deliver it to the mother personally. Check on the boy, bill my account. It's 3:30 in the morning. Dante, this isn't—" "It is," Dante interrupted, his voice dropping, losing any hint of politeness. "Handle it now." He hung up, sent the address and the details from the text message, and stared at the city. A wrong number. He should have let it go. But the image of a child struggling to breathe because of a billing code had touched a wire deep inside him, a wire that was still lethally live. Camilla had been rocking Noah for an hour, humming a lullaby her own mother used to sing, her voice cracking with fatigue and unshed tears. She had cried herself out, and now she was just numb, a hollowed-out shell. Dr. Ramirez had not replied. Of course he had not. He was probably asleep when he was a good man, but he was just one man. Then a knock. It was not a soft knock. It was a sharp, confident 3-rap sound that echoed through her tiny apartment. Camilla's blood ran cold. The landlord? He knew she was 2 weeks late on rent, or worse, debt collectors for her hospital bills. She never opened the door this late. She put Noah, who had finally dozed off, into his crib. She crept to the door and looked through the peephole. She saw nothing. The hall light was out again. The knock came again, harder this time. "Miss Reyes? Camila Reyes?" It was a woman's voice, calm, clear, her hand shaking. Camilla slid the chain and opened the door a few inches. A woman stood there, her face kind, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore an expensive-looking coat and carried a black leather medical bag. Beside her stood a man in a dark suit, built like a refrigerator, who stared blankly at the wall opposite. Yes?" Camilla whispered. "I'm Dr. Alessi," the woman said, offering a small, reassuring smile. "I received a call about your son, Noah. May I come in?" Camilla was so stunned. She could only nod, fumbling with the chain. I don't understand. I didn't call. Who sent you?" "A concerned party," the doctor said smoothly, stepping inside. The apartment seemed to shrink in her presence. She was clean, polished, and smelled faintly of antiseptic and expensive perfume. I was told you were having trouble with his prescription. The pharmacy. It's been handled. Doctor, Alessi said. She gestured to the man in the suit, who stepped forward and handed Camilla a brown paper pharmacy bag. The full prescription is in there, along with 2 refills, just in case. Camilla took the bag. It was real. The weight of the box inside, the crinkle of the paper. She looked inside. There it was. The small, life-saving vials. She felt her knees go weak. What do I owe you? Nothing, the doctor said. It's been taken care of. Now, with your permission, I'd like to just listen to Noah's lungs. I'm already here, and it will only take a minute. Camilla was speechless. Moving on autopilot, she led the doctor to the crib. Doctor. Alessi was gentle, her hands warm as she placed a cold stethoscope on Noah's back, listening. Noah barely stirred. His breathing is labored, but he's not in acute distress. The doctor murmured, "You were right to be worried. This medication will help significantly. Start his nebulizer treatment immediately." 5 minutes later, the doctor was packing her bag. The man in the suit was already in the hallway. "Thank you," Camilla said, the words feeling small and stupid. I really don't know how to thank you. Who are you people?" "Just a friend. Miss Reyes. Get some rest. You look like you need it." The doctor stepped out. The door clicked shut, leaving Camilla alone in the sudden, echoing silence. She looked at the medicine in her hand, then at the door. She ran to the window and pulled back the curtain. A long, black sedan, the kind she only saw in movies, was idling at the curb. The man in the suit opened the rear door for the doctor, got in the passenger seat, and the car slid silently away into the pre-dawn darkness. She was not sure if she had dreamed the entire thing until the nebulizer was hissing, filling the small room with a fine, medicated mist, and Noah's breathing was already beginning to quiet, to deepen. Hours later, the sun was a weak, gray smear against the Lorenzo Heights skyline. Camilla had managed 2 hours of sleep in the rocking chair, her head aching, but her heart a strange, fluttering mix of gratitude and profound suspicion. Her phone buzzed on the floor. She snatched it up, thinking it was the diner, telling her she was late for her next shift. It was an unknown number. She answered, her voice trembling. "Hello?" There was silence for a beat. Just the faint sound of distance, like the call was coming from somewhere high up. Then a voice spoke, and she felt the hairs on her arms stand up. It was a man's voice. It was deep, quiet, and held an unnerving stillness, like gravel wrapped in velvet. "You messaged me by mistake." It was not a question. It was a statement. Camilla's throat closed. Who is this? Did you send that doctor?" Another pause. She could hear the faint sound of wind. "But your son's not waiting for permission to live." A click. The line was dead. Camilla stared at the phone. She ran to the window and looked down at the street, 8 floors below. It was just a normal city morning. Buses, people walking to work, steam rising from a manhole cover. Nothing. But she felt it, a sudden, prickling sensation on the back of her neck. She was being watched. She did not know, could not have known, that a block away, parked in a dark alley with a perfect view of her apartment building, a black sedan sat with its engine off. The man inside, Marco, had a pair of binoculars on the seat next to him. "She's at the window, boss," he said into his phone. "Yeah, she looks scared. You sure about this? She's nobody." Across town, Dante Moretti stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling glass wall of his penthouse. The morning sun hit the city, but it did not reach the shadows of his office. He was looking at a file his people had put together in less than 2 hours. A grainy photo of Camila Reyes, taken from a distance, looking tired as she pushed Noah's stroller. "Her name is Camila Reyes," he said. His voice quiet. 26. 1 son, Noah, 8 months old, chronic respiratory issues, works 2 jobs, a night shift at the Starlight Diner, a day shift at the Daily Grind, no family in the state, an ex-husband who disappeared 6 months ago. He closed the file. He thought of the text. Please, I'm scared." "She's not nobody," Dante said. "She's a mother with a sick kid and no one to call. Keep an eye on her, quietly. I want to know if she so much as breaks a heel." He hung up and stared at the photo. He did not know why he had done it. It was a risk, an exposure, an attachment to a stranger. It was a stupid, sentimental move, but he knew what it felt like to be desperate, and he knew what it felt like to have no one answer the call. That night, in the cramped apartment, the only sound was the peaceful, even breathing of a baby boy. Camilla was in the rocking chair, Noah asleep on her chest, his small hand curled around her finger. The apartment was still cold, the bills were still piled high, and her life was still a mess, but her son was breathing. She kissed the top of his head, a single tear rolling down her cheek and landing in his soft hair. "It's okay, mi amor," she whispered into the darkness. "It's okay. Someone helped us." She was whispering her thanks to a stranger she could not understand, a man whose voice on the phone had terrified her, but whose actions had felt like a miracle. She did not know that her small, desperate prayer had been answered by the most dangerous man in Lorenzo Heights, and he was not finished. The diner clock, shaped like a smiling coffee pot, claimed it was 2:10 in the morning. Camilla's feet, swollen inside her sensible black shoes, insisted it was closer to dawn. The Starlight Diner was in its dead hour, that quiet, humming pocket of time, between the post-bar rush and the early shift construction workers. Only 2 booths and 1 counter seat were occupied. In one booth, a pair of graveyard shift nurses quietly ate pancakes. At the counter, a man in a dark coat nursed a black coffee, his back to the room, silent as a statue. And in the corner booth, there was the problem. He was a salesman, or at least he dressed like one. His tie was loosened, his face was flushed with whiskey, and his eyes had been glued to Camilla for the last 20 minutes. He was on his 3rd cup of coffee, which she had been ordered to keep pouring. And another one. Beautiful, he slurred, grabbing her wrist as she refilled his cup. The cheap, hot coffee sloshed, scalding her hand. Camilla hissed, pulling back. "Sir, please be careful. I'm always careful, sweetheart, but you look like you need someone to be careful with you." His hand shot out again, this time aiming for her waist. "You're tired, I can see it. You should be home. In a nice, warm bed. My bed." "Sir, I'm working," Camilla said, her voice tight. She stepped back, putting the heavy glass pot between them like a shield. "Do you need anything else? The check?" "I need you," he insisted, his voice rising, loud enough to make the nurses look up. "Come on, don't be like that. 1 drink after your shift." "What's a girl like you doing in a dump like this anyway?" He began to slide out of the booth, his intentions clear. Camilla's heart hammered. Her boss, Sal, was in the back, half asleep over his order books. She was alone out here. Before she could even call for Sal, the man from the counter spoke. His voice was not loud, but it cut through the diner's hum like a chilled knife. "She said she's working." The drunk salesman froze. He looked over at the man, who had not even turned around. "Mind your own business, buddy." The man at the counter placed a $10 bill on the counter, enough to cover his coffee 5 times over. He stood, slowly. He was tall, powerfully built, and wore his coat like armor. It was the man from the black car, the one who had stood in her hallway while the doctor checked on Noah. Camilla's breath hitched. He turned, and his eyes, flat, dark, and devoid of any emotion, landed on the salesman. It was not a look of anger. It was a look of profound, chilling indifference. "You're finished," the man said. It was not a suggestion. The salesman, who was 6'2" and built like a former high school quarterback, suddenly looked very small. He looked at the quiet man's face, at his hands, and whatever drunken courage he'd possessed evaporated, replaced by a sudden, sober fear. "Yeah, right, just leaving." The salesman stammered. He threw a 20 on the table and scrambled for the door, not even bothering to grab his coat. The diner door chimed, and he was gone into the night. Camilla was left shaking, her hands smarting from the burn. The man, her protector, her shadow, looked at her, just a brief, assessing glance. He was checking if she was hurt. He then turned and walked out, the bell chiming softly behind him. The nurses went back to their pancakes. Camilla stood there, her blood humming with adrenaline and a creeping, terrifying dread. It was not paranoia. She was being watched. This stranger, this quiet, dangerous presence. He was protecting her. But the protection itself felt like a threat, like a cage being built, bar by quiet bar. 2 days later, the feeling had not subsided. She saw the same black sedan parked across the street from the coffee shop. She felt a presence when she pushed Noah's stroller to the corner market, a set of eyes she could never quite catch. She was grateful. Yes, Noah was breathing. His cough had eased, and the dark circles under his eyes were fading. But this silent, anonymous charity was beginning to feel like ownership. She was not a project. She was not a stray to be fed. That night, after putting Noah to sleep, she sat on her lumpy sofa, her phone in her hand. Her fingers hovered over the unknown number, the one that had called her, the one that belonged to the velvet gravel voice. She was tired of being scared, tired of being a victim of circumstance, and tired of being a beneficiary of mystery. Her anger, sharp and clean, finally overrode her fear. She typed, her thumbs moving fast. "I know what you're doing. I saw your man at the diner. I see the car. I don't know who you are or what you want, but I don't need your help. I don't want it. Leave me and my son alone." She hit send, her heart leaping into her throat. She had poked the bear. She waited 1 minute, 5, 10. An hour passed. The adrenaline faded, leaving behind a sick, anxious exhaustion. He was ignoring her. Maybe she had finally scared him off or insulted him. A part of her was relieved. Another, smaller part she hated to acknowledge, was disappointed. She was about to go to bed when her phone buzzed on the coffee table, the vibration loud in the quiet room. One new message. "You and the baby are safe." Camilla stared at the words, her blood running cold. It was not a promise, it was a fact, a declaration of his control. He was not asking her permission. He was telling her the new reality. He was not leaving. The next evening, the old building's heating, always unreliable, gave up completely. The ancient radiator in her living room, which usually clanged and hissed with meager warmth, went cold and silent. The temperature in the apartment, which was poorly insulated to begin with, began to plummet. Camilla's panic returned, instant and acidic. She could handle being cold, but Noah could not. His lungs, still healing, were vulnerable. She wrapped him in 2 blankets and put a hat on his head, her mind racing. She could not afford a space heater. She could not risk a night in the cold. She was about to call her best friend, Maya, to beg for a place on her couch, when a familiar, sharp knock echoed at the door. Her heart seized. It was him, the man with the voice. She ran to the peephole. It was not him. It was a man in a blue work uniform, holding a large metal toolbox. He looked bored. She opened the door, the chain still on. "Can I help you?" "Building management," he grunted, not looking at her. "Got a call about no heat in apartment 8C? I didn't call," Camilla said. "The heat just went out, but I haven't called anyone." The man sighed, pulling a work order from his pocket. "Look, lady, I don't know. Someone called, said it was an emergency. A baby. You 8C?" She nodded, dumbfounded. "Then I'm here to fix the radiator." She let him in. He was all business, grumbling about old pipes and cheap landlords. Within 30 minutes, there was the sound of a torch, a loud clang, and then a beautiful, miraculous hiss. Heat began to pour from the metal fins. "All set," he said, packing his tools. "What do I sign something?" Camilla asked, hovering by the door. "Nope, it's all covered. Anonymous tip, just try to stay warm." He left. Camilla stood in the center of her small living room, the waves of warmth washing over her, and felt like she was drowning. "This is not normal, Cammy," Maya said, sipping watery coffee at Camilla's kitchen table the next morning. Maya was the sister Camilla had chosen, a fellow waitress with a sharp tongue and a fiercely loyal heart. Camilla had told her everything: the text, the doctor, the diner, the heat. "I know it's not normal, Maya, But what am I supposed to do? He fixed the heat. He got Noah's medicine. Well, he hasn't hurt me. Yet, Maya said, tapping her nail on the table. This is not charity. This is a down payment. Men like this. Men with this kind of money and power. They don't give things. They invest. And they always expect a return. He's buying you. Piece by piece. First medicine. Then safety. Then heat. What's next? Your rent. A new apartment. And then what does he ask for? Cammy? What do you have to give him when he finally decides to collect? Camilla's stomach twisted. He's just helping. He's isolating, Maya corrected. He's showing you that the world is cold and broken, and he's the only one who can fix it. It's control, plain and simple. You're a smart woman, be careful. This isn't a fairy tale. This is Lorenzo Heights. Guardian angels don't have bodyguards. Dante Moretti stood by his penthouse window, looking down at the city he owned. In his hand was a small, blue, plastic rattle. His driver, the man from the diner, had found it on the floor of the hallway outside Camilla's apartment after the doctor's visit. He'd been holding it for 3 days. He was a man of discipline, of logic. His entire empire was built on the cold, hard math of risk and reward. This woman, this Camilla, was all risk. She was a civilian. She was vulnerable. She was a loose thread that could unravel everything. And yet, he closed his hand around the cheap plastic. He was 12 years old again, in an apartment that smelled of mothballs and fear. His sister, Isabella, was 4. She was burning with a fever he could feel through her thin nightgown. His mother was pleading with a doctor, a man with a shiny watch and bored eyes, who refused to treat her until he was paid. A policy, he had called it, when his mother had finally scraped together the money, begging from neighbors. It was 6 hours later. It was too late. Isabella had died in his mother's arms, her breathing shallow, then quiet. Dante had watched the doctor leave, his face impassive. He had never forgotten the man's name, or his shiny watch. 12 years later, when Dante was 24 and had just taken control of his family's business, he had paid a visit to that doctor. The man was old then, retired, living in a nice house. He did not remember Dante. He did not remember Isabella. Dante had made sure that by the time he left, the doctor had paid, in full. His attachment to this woman and her child was not logic. It was a ghost. It was the echo of a debt he could never repay. He was not helping Camila Reyes. He was helping Isabella. He was fixing the one thing his power had come too late to fix. He looked at the rattle. He put on his coat. The knock on her door was different this time. Not the sharp, demanding rap of the doctor, or the heavy thud of the repairman. It was a quiet, almost hesitant knock. Camilla's heart stopped. She knew. She just knew. She looked through the peephole. It was him. She had never seen him. Not really. Only the dark coat of his man at the diner. But she knew this man. He was tall, dressed in a dark wool overcoat that was clearly absurdly expensive. His hair was dark. His features were sharp, and his stillness was absolute. He was not looking at the people, and he was just waiting, his presence radiating a quiet, intense power that seemed to press through the solid wood of the door. He was the voice. She opened it, her hand, sticky with kitchen cleaning spray, trembling on the knob. He looked at her. His eyes were the darkest shade of brown, almost black, and they held an ancient, weary intelligence. He saw everything. Her cheap, worn-out leggings, the bleach stain on her old t-shirt, the fear in her eyes. He saw it, and he did not judge. "Miss Reyes," he said, his voice. It was exactly as she remembered, deep, quiet, and wrapped in velvet. He held up his hand. In his large, lean hand, incongruously, was Noah's blue plastic rattle. "I believe your son dropped this," he said. "My driver found it in the hall, the night the doctor came." Camilla stared at the rattle, then at his face. "You." The word came out as a whisper. The texts, the diner, the heat. It was you. "My name is Dante," he said, as if introducing himself at a dinner party. Her anger, fueled by Maya's warning, surged. "I told you to leave us alone." She blocked the doorway, her small frame rigid. "I don't want your money. I don't want your Your protection." Dante's eyes flickered past her, to the small, clean apartment, to the crib in the corner. "You said that, and I heard you. Then why are you here?" she demanded, her voice rising. "Are you here to collect? Is that what this is? What do you want?" He looked back at her, and his expression, which had been so impassive, shifted. A flicker of something dark and painful crossed his features. He was not looking at her. He was looking through her, at a memory she could not see. He held her gaze. "Because someone should have helped my sister." The answer hit her like a physical blow. It was so simple, so raw, and so completely unexpected. Her anger deflated, replaced by a sudden, aching confusion. This was not the answer of a man who wanted to own her. It was the answer of a man who was broken. From the crib. Noah let out a small, fussy cry, his nap disturbed. Dante's eyes immediately snapped to the sound, his focus total. The hardness in his expression vanished, replaced by a deep, aching softness that stunned her. "May I?" he asked, his voice low. She should have said no. She should have slammed the door, called Maya, called the police, though she knew the police would do nothing, but she found herself stepping aside. Dante walked into her apartment. The small room was immediately consumed by his presence. He was too big, too dark, too expensive for her world. He smelled of cold air, wool, and something clean and masculine, like sandalwood. He stood over the crib and looked down at Noah, who usually cried for strangers, just stared up at him with wide, curious eyes. "He looks like you," Dante said quietly. "He has my eyes," Camilla whispered, standing 10 feet away, her arms wrapped around her stomach. Dante reached a hand into the crib. His hand was large, his knuckles scarred, a heavy gold signet ring on his smallest finger. But his touch was impossibly gentle as he brushed a finger over Noah's soft cheek. Noah cooed, grabbing for the ring. Camilla's throat tightened. She watched this dangerous, powerful stranger, this man who commanded shadows and fixed her life like a broken toy, and she saw him melt at the sight of her child. The spark was not just a spark, it was a wildfire. It was the terrifying realization that this man, who was everything she should fear, was the first person in years to make her feel something other than tired. He turned to her, the softness still lingering in his eyes. "You are a good mother, Camilla." "You don't know me," she said, her voice shaking. "I know you worked 2 jobs. I know you sat in a rocking chair for an hour after the doctor left, just to watch your son breathe. I know you haven't eaten a real meal in 3 days. You don't have to do it alone." It was too much. The kindness, the intensity, the way he said her name. It was a trap, a beautiful, warm, velvet trap. "Please leave," she said. Dante looked at her for a long moment. He did not look angry or insulted. He looked understanding. He nodded. Once. He walked to the door. As he passed her, his sleeve brushed her arm. She flinched, and a jolt of pure, electric heat shot through her. He stopped, his face inches from hers. She could feel the heat radiating from his body. He was so close she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. She held her breath, her entire body rigid, her senses overwhelmed by his proximity. He was going to kiss her. She knew it. And the most terrifying part was that she wanted him to. He did not. He just held her gaze, his own eyes searching her face, as if memorizing it. Then he stepped back. "I'll leave, for now. But I am not the one you should be afraid of." He opened the door and was gone. Camilla stood frozen, her hand on the doorframe. She waited until she heard the distant sound of the elevator doors sliding shut. She locked the deadbolt. She slid the chain. She leaned her forehead against the cool, cheap wood of the door, her entire body shaking. She lifted a trembling hand and touched her lips. They were tingling. He had not touched her, but she felt branded by his presence. Maya was right. He was dangerous. But as she looked at Noah, sleeping peacefully in his crib, warm and safe, she realized the truth. She was not afraid he would hurt her. She was afraid of how safe he made her feel. The pharmacy's fluorescent lights hummed, making the back of Camilla's neck ache. It had been 10 days since the night the strange, kind doctor had appeared. 10 days of Noah's steady, easy breathing. 10 days of seeing the black sedan parked down the street, a silent sentinel in her life. 10 days of her mind replaying the moment that man, Dante, had stood in her apartment, his presence filling every corner, his dark eyes holding a pain she recognized. Now, the prescription was due again. She stood in line, her stomach in a cold knot, rehearsing the fight she would have to have with the insurance company, the clinic, the world. She finally reached the counter. "Camila Reyes," she said, her voice tired, "picking up for Noah." The pharmacist, a young woman she did not recognize, did not ask for her insurance card. She did not sigh or start typing furiously. She simply turned, plucked a white paper bag from the shelf, and slid it across the counter. "That's all set for you, ma'am," she said cheerfully. Camilla stared at the bag. "Set? What? What's the copay? I need to—" "There's no charge. It's been paid for." A cold dread, sharper than her previous anxiety, settled over her. Paid for? By who? The pharmacist pointed to the bag. Stapled to the front was a small, thick envelope. Inside, on heavy, cream-colored cardstock, was a note. The handwriting was sharp, angular, and unapologetically masculine. He doesn't wait well. It was not a kind gesture. It was a statement of control. It was a dismissal of her struggle, her efforts, her very existence. He had not just paid. He had made sure she knew he had paid. He had made her irrelevant in her own life, in her own son's survival. Maya's words echoed in her ears. "He's buying you, piece by piece." Camilla's hands were shaking as she grabbed the bag. The anger was so pure and hot it burned away her exhaustion. She walked out of the pharmacy, the automatic doors sliding shut behind her, and pulled out her phone. She hit the unknown number. It rang once. "Yes?" His voice. That same quiet, velvet and gravel rumble. "Where are you?" she demanded, her voice low and shaking. "Good afternoon, Camilla." "Do not do that," she hissed, walking so fast she was almost running, though she had nowhere to go. "Do not patronize me. Where are you?" A pause. "I'm at Il Corvo, on Grant Avenue. Do you know it? I'll find it." She hung up. Il Corvo was not a restaurant. It was a fortress. It was old brick and dark, tinted glass, with no menu posted outside. A man in a dark suit stood by the heavy oak door. He looked at Camilla, in her worn coat and coffee-stained sneakers, with a blank, assessing stare. "I'm here to see Dante," she said, lifting her chin. The man's expression did not change, but he nodded, as if expecting her. "Mr. Moretti is expecting you." He led her through a silent, dark wood dining room where waiters in crisp white aprons polished glasses for a dinner service that was still hours away. The air smelled of lemon oil and old wine. She was led to a private booth in the back, upholstered in dark red leather. Dante was sitting there, a small espresso cup in front of him. He was not in a suit, but in a simple, dark cashmere sweater that only made him look more imposing. He rose as she approached. She did not sit. She threw the paper bag onto the table. The plastic bottle inside made a dull thud. "What is this?" she demanded. Dante looked at the bag, then at her. His eyes were calm. "It's your son's medication." "It's a power play," she shot back, her voice trembling. "It's you telling me that I'm incompetent, that I can't even take care of my own child. You didn't do this to be kind. You did this to prove you could." He motioned to the seat opposite him. "Sit down, Camilla." "I don't want to sit down. I don't want you to stop. I told you, I don't want your help. I don't want your gifts." "I'm not buying your compliance," Dante said, his voice dropping, losing its social edge and gaining that familiar stillness. "I'm buying time. Time for him." He tapped the bag. "His lungs don't care about your pride. They only care about the medicine. You were worried about the refill. I removed the obstacle. That's all." "You removed me," she cried, her voice cracking. "You took away my job as his mother. His mother's job is to see him healthy. Her job is not to fight with insurance companies and pharmacy clerks. Her job is not to work 18 hours a day until she collapses. I am helping you do your job, not taking it from you." His logic was so cold, so irrefutable. It shattered her anger, and what was left underneath was the raw, brittle fear that was always there. The tears she had refused to shed in the pharmacy burned her eyes. She sank into the booth, defeated. "You don't understand," she whispered. "The fight gone. Nothing is free. Not for people like me. Everything has a price, and I can't afford what you're going to ask for." He watched her, his expression unreadable. "What do you think I'm going to ask for?" She looked down at her hands, twisting a napkin. "My ex-husband, Rick, he was like this at first. Grand gestures. He paid off my credit card. He bought me a new car when mine broke down. He said he was just removing obstacles." She took a shaky breath, the memories tasting like ash. "And then he started removing other things. My friends, my job. He said he'd take care of me. And for a while, I let him. When I got pregnant, he was so happy." "And then?" Dante asked, his voice quiet. "And then Noah got sick, 2 months old, and the first hospital bill came. It was $9,000. Rick saw it, and he just left. One day I came home from the grocery store, and his closet was empty. The car he'd bought me was gone. He'd emptied the joint bank account." She had not said this aloud to anyone, not even Maya. "I was evicted 2 weeks later, with a sick baby. I lived in a shelter for a month, a woman there. Her kid had a rash, and a social worker came. They took her kid, just took him, because she was poor, because the shelter was unstable. I've been running ever since. I've been terrified, every single day, that someone will knock on my door and take him from me because I can't afford a note on a prescription bag." She finally looked up, meeting his dark eyes. "So you see, your help feels like a threat. It feels like you're just building a case, making me dependent. So when you decide to collect, I won't have a choice." Dante was silent for a long time. He stared into his empty espresso cup. The bustling sound of the kitchen, the clink of silver, faded into the background. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, softer. He was a weak man. "He was just a man," she said. "No," Dante corrected. "A man who runs from a sick child is not a man. He's a coward." He stood up. "Come with me." "Where?" she asked, her body tensing. "I want to show you something. You can leave the medicine. It will be here when you get back." He did not wait for her answer. He just started walking, numbly, like a sleepwalker. She followed. He led her not out the front, but through the kitchen, a gleaming, copper pot and stainless steel marvel, and to a service elevator. It rose, silently, for a long time. The doors opened onto a dark, concrete staircase. "Where are we?" she asked, her voice small. "Up," he said. He pushed open a heavy metal door, and the sound of the city hit her. They were on a rooftop, high above Lorenzo Heights. The wind was fierce and cold, whipping her hair across her face and stealing her breath. The sun was setting, and the city was a vast, glittering carpet of lights, beautiful and indifferent. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering. Dante stood near the ledge, unfazed by the cold or the height. "This is my city," he said. "Not as a boast, but as a fact. From here, you don't see the broken pipes or the pharmacy lines or the eviction notices. You just see the hole, the system. I fix things in the system, Camilla, that's what I do." "I'm not part of your system," she said, her teeth chattering. He turned to her. You've been a broken part of it for a long time. I'm offering you a way to fix it." He took off his heavy cashmere coat and, before she could protest, draped it over her shoulders. It was impossibly warm and heavy, a cocoon of wool and sandalwood that enveloped her. What are you talking about?" "This restaurant," he said, gesturing to the roof beneath their feet. "Il Corvo. The front-of-house manager just retired. The job is open, it pays a salary, it has full medical, dental. For you and your son, it's a real job. You'd run the dining room, you'd be good at it, you're efficient, you're smart, and you don't take nonsense from anyone. I saw it at the diner." Camilla's heart stopped. A salary. Insurance. A real job. It was a lifeline. It was the answer to every terrified 3 a.m. prayer she had ever whispered, and it was from him. I can't, she whispered, the words torn from her by the wind. Why? Because it's you. It's still your money. It's still your world. I'd be yours. He stepped closer, his body blocking the wind. You would be my employee. Nothing more, unless you wanted it to be. This isn't a gift, Camilla. It's an offer. You would earn it. She looked up at him, her eyes desperate. I can't. He searched her face, a flicker of genuine frustration in his eyes. You are the most stubborn woman I have ever met. You would rather drown than admit you're tired of treading water. It's my life, she said, her voice rising. It's the only one I have, and I will not hand it over to you just because you have a nice view. She pulled the coat off her shoulders and thrust it at him. I don't want your job, I don't want your coat, and I don't want your protection. Take me home. The ride down in the elevator was suffocatingly silent. The drive back to her apartment was even worse. He drove a large, dark sedan that was as quiet and insulated as a bank vault. The tension in the car was a living thing, a third passenger. He parked in front of her building. She had her hand on the door handle, ready to flee when he spoke. You push everyone away before they have a chance to leave you. His voice was quiet, but the words hit her like a physical blow. What did you say? He turned to her, his profile sharp in the dim streetlight. You're so convinced you'll be abandoned. You do the job for them. You tear it down yourself so you can control the wreckage. Your husband left. So now, no man will ever get the chance to leave you again, even one who's just trying to help. It was too much. It was too true. It was a violation. He had seen the most broken, terrified part of her, and he had just said it. Her hand moved before she thought. The sound of her palm connecting with his cheek was shockingly loud in the silent car. Camilla froze, her hand tingling. Her breath caught in her throat. Dante did not move. He did not yell. He did not even flinch. He just slowly turned his head back to her, the red imprint of her hand stark against his skin. His eyes were not angry. They were dark, assessing, and sad. He reached out, and she flinched, expecting to be hit back. He did not hit her. He wrapped his long fingers around her wrist, the one she had slapped him with. His grip was not violent, but it was absolute. There was no escaping it. He held her hand suspended in the air between them. I'm not leaving, he whispered, his voice a raw, intense vow. You can slap me, you can yell at me, you can refuse my help, but I am not him. I am not leaving, not until Noah doesn't need a mother who's killing herself to survive. She stared at him, tears streaming down her face, her body trembling. He was holding her captive, gently, and he was promising her stability. He was promising her the one thing she craved and feared most. He was still holding her wrist. He looked at her mouth, then at her eyes. She was not breathing. He leaned in, slowly, giving her time to pull away. She could not. She was frozen. His mouth touched hers. It was not a gentle kiss. It was hesitant for a single second, a question asked, and then it was a collision. It was breathless and intense. His lips were firm, cool from the outside air, and they tasted faintly of coffee and something powerful and male. It was a kiss of frustration, of desperation, of a control so profound it was breaking. A small, broken gasp escaped her throat, and he deepened the kiss, his other hand coming up to cup her jaw, his thumb stroking the sensitive skin under her ear. She was drowning. Her free hand came up and clutched the lapel of his sweater, her knuckles white. She felt a jolt of pure, terrifying heat shoot through her, pooling low in her stomach. It was the first time she had felt anything but fear in so long. Wah! A thin, reedy cry crackled to life from the purse on the floor, where her phone was connected to the baby monitor app. Wah! The sound shattered the moment. They broke apart, both of them breathing hard, their foreheads almost touching. Dante's eyes were black, his pupils blown wide. Camilla was shaking, her lips tingling and wet. Noah, she whispered, her voice unrecognizable. Go, he said, his voice rough. She fumbled for the door handle. her body electric and confused. She scrambled out of the car and ran into the building. Not looking back, she burst into her apartment, her heart hammering, and scooped Noah from his crib. "Shh, mi amor, I'm here, Mama's here." She rocked him, her body still vibrating from the kiss, her mind a total fog. She heard her apartment door open. She spun around, her heart seizing. Dante was standing in the doorway, his coat in his hand. He had followed her. He just stood there, watching her soothe her child. The sight of him, the most dangerous man she had ever met, standing in her home, watching her rock her baby, was the most terrifying and most intimate thing she had ever experienced. She got Noah settled, his cries softening to whimpers. She laid him back in his crib, her hands shaking. When she turned, Dante was still there. He had not moved. She walked into the living room. He followed, shutting the door quietly behind him. They stood in the middle of her cramped room, the air thick with unspoken words. Everything was different. The foundation of her world had cracked. She sat on the edge of her lumpy couch. He sat on the opposite end, a good 3 feet of space between them. He said nothing. She said nothing. They just sat in the quiet apartment, the only sound the soft hiss of the radiator he had fixed. They pretended nothing had changed. They pretended he had not touched her, had not branded her with that kiss, but everything had. Dante Moretti's world, which had been built on a foundation of cold logic and disciplined violence, was developing a structural weakness. Her name was Camilla. He was in his office, the city lights far below, but he was not looking at the view. He was looking at his organization's ledger, not the financial one, but the one of loyalty and risk. For a week, he had been cleaning house. An enforcer who was skimming from protection rackets was gone. A supplier who was talking too loosely to his girlfriend was replaced. Every thread that was not 100% steel was being systematically cut and cauterized. His men had noticed. Leo, his consigliere, had watched him. "You're preparing for a war, Dante." "I'm preparing for an attachment," Dante had replied, his voice flat. "Attachments are liabilities. I am fortifying my assets." He was fortifying, but the true liability was still in her 8th-floor apartment, vulnerable to anyone who knew how to look. He had men on her street, in her building, but it felt like patching a dam with paper. The call he had been half expecting, half dreading, came not from his men, but from Camilla. But her voice was not terrified. It was cold. "I can't work at the diner anymore," she said, her voice flat. All the emotion pressed out of it. "What happened?" he asked, his own voice dangerously quiet. "A woman came in, tall, blonde, in a red dress that cost more than my rent. She knew who I was. She knew about you." He was already on his feet, his jacket in his hand. "What did she say?" "She ordered a coffee, black. Then she told me that I was a charity case, that your whores usually lasted a month, but that I must be special to get a pity fuck in my own apartment." Camilla's voice trembled, but she did not cry. "She told me to enjoy the trinkets while they lasted, because you get bored. Then she threw her coffee at me, the hot coffee, right in the middle of the diner. Sal, my boss, he just watched. He was too afraid of her to say anything." Dante's hand was clenched so tightly around his phone that the plastic creaked. "Are you burned?" "Just my uniform and my pride," she whispered. "I quit. I can't have that. Your world, bleeding into mine. Not where I work. Where are you now?" "Home. I locked the door." "Good," he said. "The job I offered you, it's still yours. I'll send a car for you in the morning. 9 o'clock. Be ready. You'll meet the general manager. You'll be on the payroll by noon." He hung up before she could refuse. He made one more call. "Find Sophia. Bring her to my penthouse. Now." Sophia arrived an hour later, not in cuffs, but escorted by 2 of his largest men. She looked triumphant, her red dress still immaculate. She'd been one of his companions years ago, a transactional relationship she had always wanted to be more. "Dante, darling," she purred, walking into his living room. "I was wondering when you'd miss me. Did the little charity mouse run home? Dante did not look up from the glass of whiskey he was holding. You went to the Starlight Diner. Of course. Someone had to tell her the rules. She's a bottom feeder and you're... She, Dante interrupted, his voice a blade of ice, is not your concern. You insulted a woman who is under my protection. You did it in public. You made a scene. You made me look sloppy. Sophia's smile faltered. Dante, I was just... Pack a bag, he said, finally looking at her. His eyes were empty. You have until morning. You can go to Milan, you can go to Los Angeles, but you are no longer welcome in Lorenzo Heights. If I see you, if I hear of you, if you so much as send a postcard to this city, I will consider it a personal insult, and you know how I handle insults. Her face went white. You're exiling me? For her? For a waitress? I am exiling you for you, he said. You are loud, you are impulsive, and you are a liability. My driver is downstairs. He will take you to your apartment. He will wait while you pack one bag, then he will take you to the airport. You can't do this, she shrieked. I just did, he said, turning back to the window. Goodbye, Sophia. The next day, Camila Reyes, in the only black blazer she owned, walked into Il Corvo. She was terrified, but the general manager, a stern, older woman named Alara, did not treat her like a mobster's pet. She treated her like an applicant. She reviewed her resume, the 2 jobs, the shift managing experience at the coffee shop. Mr. Moretti said you were efficient, Alara said, her eyes sharp. I do not care about his reasons. I care about my dining room. You will be on probation for 60 days. You will learn our system. You will not be late. You will not cry. And you will never, ever speak of Mr. Moretti's personal business. Am I clear? Yes, ma'am, Camilla said, her back straight. Good, your first shift starts now. Camilla did not just take the job. She consumed it. She was born for the chaos. She learned the reservation system in a day. She charmed the surly bartenders, reorganized the chaotic linen closet, and handled a complaining VIP customer with a grace that even Ilara had to respect. She was not just surviving. She was thriving. She had a salary. She had benefits. For the first time in her life, she had a 9-to-5 job. She hired a state-vetted sitter, an older woman named Mrs. Petrova for Noah. Dante came in sometimes. He never sat at a table. He would stand at the far end of the bar, nursing an espresso, and just watch her. He watched her smile at a customer. He watched her correct a waiter's posture. He watched her glow with a confidence he had never seen, and he felt a quiet, burning pride that was entirely new to him. Noah's health, removed from the stress and the cold of the apartment, stabilized. His cough vanished. His cheeks filled out. Dante started visiting her apartment, not as a mysterious benefactor, but as just Dante. He would arrive after her shift, and she would let him in. He would sit on the floor, the most powerful man in the city, on her cheap, worn-out rug, and stack colorful plastic blocks with her son, Noah, who was shy with everyone, adored him. He would crawl into Dante's lap, babbling and listen, mesmerized, as Dante read Goodnight Moon in his deep, quiet rumble. Camilla would watch them, her heart a tangle of warmth and terror. She was seeing the man he could have been, the father, the husband, and it was so much more dangerous than the boss. One evening, she made a decision. She packed a small thermos of arroz con leche, sweet rice pudding, the one comfort food her mother had taught her to make. She took Noah to Mrs. Petrova's, and then she took a taxi to his penthouse. He opened the door, and his surprise was obvious. He was in his shirt sleeves, his hair slightly undone. He looked human. Camilla, he said, his voice hesitant. Is everything all right? Is it Noah? Noah's fine, she said, holding up the thermos. I'm a terrible employee. I keep forgetting to thank my boss for the job. A slow, rare smile touched his mouth. Come in. His apartment was vast, minimalist and cold, all glass and steel and shades of gray. It was beautiful, but it was not a home. It was a fortress. You brought me rice pudding? He asked, as she unpacked it in his sterile, gleaming kitchen. It's all I know how to make that's worth eating, she said, her hands fumbling with the spoon. A peace offering, or a thank you. I'm not sure which. He took the spoon, dipped it in, and tasted. He closed his eyes, just for a second. It's good, he said. My mother's recipe. They stood there in the quiet kitchen, the city lights glittering all around them. The tension from that night in the car, the kiss, was still there. It had been humming beneath every interaction, every shared look over Noah's head, every time he'd watched her at the restaurant. You're good at the job, he said, his voice low. I like it, she admitted. Elara terrifies me, but I like the work. You're rebuilding. The word hung in the air. Rebuilding. He set the thermos down and stepped closer. She did not back away, not this time. Thank you, Dante, she whispered. For everything, for not letting me drown. I told you I wasn't leaving, he said, his voice rough. He lifted his hand, not to her wrist, but to her face. His thumb stroked her cheekbone, his touch calloused but incredibly tender. You're not a liability, Camilla. Not anymore. He lowered his head, and this kiss was nothing like the first. It was not born of anger or control. It was slow. It was tender. It was a question, a plea, and an answer all in one. His lips were soft, moving over hers with a practiced, devastating patience. She melted into it, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. She could feel his heart, a steady, powerful beat beneath her palm. The kiss deepened, and the heat she remembered flared to life, but this time it was not a wildfire. It was a hearth. It was warm and deep and intoxicating. He pulled her closer, one hand sliding from her cheek down her neck, his fingers tangling in the hair at her nape, while the other arm wrapped around her waist, locking her against him. She felt safe, utterly, completely safe. And that terrified her more than anything. She pulled back, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her hands pushing against his hard chest. I can't, she whispered, her eyes wide with panic. Dante's expression was tight, his own breathing unsteady. What is it? This, she said, gesturing between them. Us, you, I can't, I'm scared. I would never hurt you, Camila, or Noah. You know that. I know, she said, and her voice broke. That's what scares me. I'm not afraid you'll hit me. I'm not afraid you'll leave. I'm afraid of you. I'm afraid of what you do. I'm afraid of the men in suits who watch me. I'm afraid of the woman you exiled. I don't know how to be with someone who can just make people disappear. She stepped back, putting the cold marble island between them. I'm afraid I'll forget who I am. I'm afraid I'll just become one of your assets. I'm afraid of loving someone like you. He watched her, his face a mask of old pain. He had built his walls so high to keep the world out. He had not realized they would also keep someone in. He walked around the island slowly and stood in front of her. He did not touch her. I won't ruin you, he said, his voice a raw promise. I'll rebuild with you. She searched his eyes, wanting so badly to believe him. His phone buzzed on the counter. A text. He ignored it. It buzzed again and again. A triple buzz. An emergency. His eyes hardened, the softness gone, replaced in an instant by the boss. I have to take this. I'll have Marco drive you home. No, I can. Marco will drive you home, he said, his tone final. She left, the taste of him on her lips, his promise and his cold dismissal warring in her heart. The moment she was gone, Dante read the text from Leo. We have a problem. A big one, Russo. 20 minutes later, Dante was in the basement of Il Corvo, in a walk-in freezer that was not used for food. Leo stood with him. Between them sat a man, tied to a chair, his face bruised. Sal Russo, his lieutenant, his man in charge of the docks. He's been talking, Leo said quietly, for 6 weeks, to the Valenti crew. The Valenti brothers were his only real rivals, vicious, sloppy, and ambitious. What did you give them, Sal? Dante's voice was conversational. Russo spat blood on the floor. Go to hell, Moretti. Dante looked at Leo. What did he give them? Shipment manifests. Safe house locations. Leo paused, his face grim. And an address. In the Narrows. Apartment 8C. The temperature in the freezer dropped another 20 degrees. Dante's stillness was absolute. "What else?" Dante whispered. He suggested the boy," Leo said, his voice sick. "As leverage, to make you back off the port expansion. The Valentis were planning. A pickup. Tonight." Dante walked over to Russo. He looked at the man he had known for 10 years, the man who had eaten at his table. "A child," Dante said. It was not a question. Russo's eyes finally showed terror. "Dante, it was business, just leverage. They wouldn't have hurt him." "He doesn't wait well," Dante said, his voice a dead, flat calm. He looked at his enforcer, Marco, who had been standing by the door. "Marco, take him to the docks." "Dante, please," Russo screamed. "He's finished." Dante walked out of the freezer, Leo following him. "The Valentis are still out there," Leo said. "The threat isn't over. They know about her. They know she's your weakness." "Then she can't be a weakness," Dante said, his jaw rigid. "She has to be a fortress. She has to be mine." He was halfway to his car, intending to move her and Noah to his penthouse to lock them down. When his phone rang, it was her. He answered. "Camila, pack a bag. Now, I'm on my way." "Dante," she whispered, and his blood turned to ice. It was not her normal voice. It was the voice of pure, undiluted terror. It was a threat of a sound. "What is it? What's wrong?" There's someone, oh God." "Where are you?" he roared. "In the bathroom with Noah. I heard a noise. On the fire escape. I looked out the window. What did you see, Camilla? Talk to me." He heard her take a ragged, sobbing breath. "A man. He's outside my window. Dante. He's on the fire escape." Her whisper broke. "They're here." "Stay in the bathroom." "Lock the door. Do not move. Do not make a sound. I am 3 minutes away." Dante's voice, stripped of all velvet, was a piece of cold-rolled steel. The line went dead. Camilla did not breathe. She scrambled into the tiny, windowless bathroom. Noah clutched so tightly to her chest he whimpered. She fumbled with the flimsy lock on the doorknob. It clicked, a pathetic, tiny sound against the terror clawing at her throat. Outside, in the alley, a voice shouted, rough and angry. "She's in 8C, Russo said. A different sound cut the night. A heavy, metallic thunk that Camilla did not recognize, followed by a silenced, spitting sound. Foot, foot, foot. She clamped her hand over her own mouth, her other hand covering Noah's head. A man screamed, a wet, short sound that was cut off instantly. Then, chaos. A deafening bang, bang, bang echoed up the fire escape, unsilenced this time. The man on her window ledge was firing down into the alley. Glass shattered somewhere. More shouting. Camilla was on the floor, curled around her son, her body wedged between the toilet and the bathtub. She was shaking so violently her teeth chattered. The cheap tile was cold against her cheek. She was going to die here, in this cramped, peeling bathroom, clutching her baby. She squeezed her eyes shut, praying to a God she had not spoken to in years. A heavy thud vibrated through the entire apartment wall. The man on the fire escape? Had he fallen? More shots, louder, closer, from the alley, then the sound of running. The clatter of a metal trash can being overturned. Then, silence. The silence was worse. It was absolute. It stretched for 1 minute. 2. Camilla's world had shrunk to the smell of baby powder and the hammering of her own blood in her ears. A crash. The sound of her apartment door splintering, being kicked open. The frame splitting. She let out a choked, terrified sob. They were inside. Heavy footsteps, fast, moving through her small living room. Stopping outside the bathroom door, she held her breath, waiting for the bullet. "Camilla!" Dante's voice. A roar. He did not wait for an answer. He kicked the bathroom door. The cheap wood split, the lock popped, and the door flew open, slamming against the wall. He stood there, filling the doorway, a silhouette against the dim light of her apartment. He was breathing hard. his chest heaving. His face was smeared with something dark. There was blood on his collar, on his hands. He was holding a black pistol, held low at his side. His eyes found her, cowering on the floor. The pistol vanished, tucked behind his back, and he was lunging, kneeling in front of her. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, his hands framing her face, his thumbs wiping at her tears. "Are you hit? Is he—" No, she stammered, shaking. The man, the window—" "He's gone," Dante said, his voice raw. "He fled. He's wounded. My men are after him. The other one is not." He meant dead. The man in the alley was dead. The reality of it, the violence, the blood on his face, crashed over her. She looked at him, at this man who had read "Goodnight Moon" to her son, and she saw a killer. And then he pulled her to him. He wrapped his arms around her and Noah, crushing them to his chest, burying his face in her hair. His entire body was vibrating with the leftover adrenaline of the fight. He held her with a desperate, animalistic strength, as if he was trying to absorb her, to shield her with his own body. "It's over," he whispered, his voice shaking, something she had never heard before. "It's over. I have you. You're safe." She should have been repulsed. She should have been terrified of him, but she was not. She was just safe. She clutched the lapels of his jacket, buried her face against his neck, and finally let out the scream that had been frozen in her throat. It was a silent, desperate sob, and she wept for the life she had lost, the man on the fire escape, and the terrifying, brutal relief of being alive. He held her for a long time, rocking her on the bathroom floor until her shaking subsided. "Get your bag," he said, his voice flat and hard again. The boss was back. "The one you packed for the hospital. Get Noah's things. We're leaving." "Where? Where are we going?" "Home," he said. "My home? You're never setting foot in this place again." The drive to his penthouse was a silent, speeding blur. Marco drove, his face a granite mask. Dante sat in the back with her and Noah, his body a rigid wall of protection, his hand on her knee, a silent, grounding pressure. His home was not a home. It was a fortress in the sky. The private elevator opened directly into his living room, a vast expanse of dark floors and glass walls that overlooked the glittering, indifferent city. It was cold. It was sterile. It was safe. He led her to a guest suite that was larger than her entire apartment, with a bathroom carved from white marble and a bed that looked big enough for 6 people. "Rest," he said, his voice softer. "No one can get to you here. No one. The elevator requires my fingerprint. The stairwell doors are reinforced steel. The windows are bulletproof. You are safe." He left, pulling the door quietly shut. And for the first time, Camilla was truly alone with her thoughts. She was a prisoner, a willing, grateful, terrified prisoner. She showered, washing the scent of fear in her old apartment off her skin. She put Noah in the sleek, modern crib that had been delivered and assembled while she was in the shower. She stood at the vast window, looking down at the city. She had been saved by the very violence she had feared. The door opened. Dante stood there. He had showered. He was in a simple black t-shirt and gray sweatpants. His hair was damp. The blood was gone. But his eyes were haunted. "He's asleep," she whispered, not turning. Dante came to stand beside her, his shoulder almost touching hers. "He's okay. Because of you," she said. You killed that man." He did not deny it. "He came to kill your son, Camila. He came to take him, to use him, to hurt him, to make me vulnerable. There is no negotiation for that. There is no mercy." She finally looked at him. How can you live like this, with that ice in your veins? How can you live without it?" he countered, his voice low. "You lived every day in fear. Fear of the pharmacy, of the landlord, of a social worker. Your fear was just quieter. Mine is loud, but I don't let it win." He reached out, his fingers brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. "You shouldn't have been there. This is my fault. I brought this to your door. I put you on the board. I made you a target. I don't know what to feel, she confessed, her voice trembling. I'm so scared, and I'm so grateful. And when you burst in, no one has ever... Ever what? He asked, his voice rough. No one has ever come for me, she whispered. I've always been the one left behind, the one who has to clean up the mess. Tonight, you came. The space between them was electric, charged with the night's terror and the overwhelming relief of survival. He was not the boss. She was not the employee. They were just two people, survivors, standing in a glass tower, the world far below. I will always come for you, he vowed. He leaned in, and this time, there was no hesitation. His mouth found hers, and it was not a kiss of tenderness. It was a kiss of raw, desperate possession. It was a claim. It was the devil almost had you, and you are mine. It was harsh and deep and hungry. She met him with equal force. Her fear, her relief, her terror, her gratitude, it all poured into the kiss. Her hands gripped his t-shirt, pulling him closer, as if he were a life raft. He broke the kiss, only to lift her into his arms. She was light, her legs wrapping around his waist, her mouth never leaving his. He carried her from the window to the bed, the city lights painting them in shades of silver and blue. He laid her down, and for a second, he hovered over her, his dark eyes searching hers. He was asking a final question. She gave him the answer by sliding her hands from his shoulders up into his hair, pulling him down. The passionate, emotional scene that unfolded was not about lust. It was about life. It was about the desperate, human need to affirm existence in the face of death. Every touch was a statement, you are alive. Every kiss was a promise, I am here. He was tender, his hands shaking as he brushed the hair from her face. He was protective, his body shielding hers, a constant warm weight that made her feel, for the first time, utterly secure. His movements were slow, deliberate, a stark contrast to the violence of the night. He kissed her forehead, her eyelids, the frantic pulse at her throat. He whispered her name like a prayer, a talisman against the darkness outside. She held him, her fingers tracing the hard muscles of his back, the scars she could feel but not see. She met his rhythm, a silent, breathless dance of two broken people finding a moment of wholeness. It was overwhelming, this complete surrender to the man who was both her savior and her captor. It was a quiet, desperate, and profound claiming. A vow made not in words, but in the shelter they found in each other's arms. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets, the moon a bright witness. Camilla was curled against his side, her head on his chest, listening to the steady, slowing beat of his heart. The adrenaline was gone, leaving a deep, quiet exhaustion. I have never, she whispered into the darkness, felt so lonely in my entire life as I did before I met you. Even when I was with Rick, even when I'm in a crowd, it was a loneliness so deep, it felt like a part of my bones. Dante's arm tightened around her, his hand stroking her hair. He was silent for a long time. My sister, he said, his voice thick. Isabella, after she died, I felt something break. I knew that I was cursed, that anything I loved, anything I touched, I would destroy. That's why I built this place. He gestured to the glass walls. It's not a home. It's a vault. I keep everything I value, locked away. My emotions, my self. Because if I let it out, if I touch it, it breaks. He turned his head, his dark eyes finding hers in the dim light. Tonight, when I heard your voice on the phone, that man was outside your window. I felt it. The curse. I was too late. I almost destroyed you. You didn't, she whispered, rising up on one elbow to look at him. You saved me. You saved us. You didn't destroy anything. You rebuilt me, remember? That's what you said. He looked at her, at the strength in her eyes, the resilience he had admired from the beginning. We can't let them win, she said, her voice fierce. We can't let that violence outside define what we are in here. This is real. The rest is just noise." He looked at her, and a part of the vault inside him, the one that held Isabella's ghost, finally clicked open. "We fight together," he said. They vowed it, a silent promise in the safety of the fortress. For 2 days, they lived in that tower, a strange, suspended reality. They ate together, they played with Noah on the floor, they slept in each other's arms. It was a glimpse of a normal life, lived 80 stories in the air. On the 3rd morning, Dante kissed her, a deep, long kiss. "It's time to end this," he said. "The man who fled, he's scared, he's talking. The Valentis are nervous. They think I'm weak, hiding in my tower. I'm going to set a trap. I'm going to use myself as bait. I'm going to finish this, so they never come near you or Noah again." "Dante, no," she pleaded, clutching his shirt. "It's too dangerous. Don't go." "It's the only way," he said, his face hard. "Marco and 2 of my men will be outside your door. You will not leave this room. Do you understand me? You stay here, and you keep him safe, and I will be back before he wakes up from his nap." He kissed her one last time. "I will be back." He left. The heavy door to the suite clicked shut. The silence was deafening. Camilla paced the room. A cage. An hour passed. 2. She checked on Noah, who was sleeping peacefully. She tried to read. She tried to watch television. The city outside seemed to mock her. The private phone in the suite, the one Dante had told her was for internal use only, rang. She snatched it up. "Dante! He's a fool," a voice rasped, a man she did not know. "Going out like that, thinking he could draw us out. But we're smarter. We know where his heart is." Camilla's blood went cold. Who is this? "We know you're in the tower. We know the boy is with you. Dante can't protect you. Not really, but we'll make you a deal." "What do you want?" she whispered, her hand gripping the receiver. "We want you gone. Dante is distracted. He's making bad decisions. He's weak. And it's because of you. You and the boy. You disappear. You take the kid. You get on a bus. And you never come back. You do that. And we let Dante live. We let the boy live." "You're lying," she stammered. "Are we? We got to Russo. We got to your apartment. We can get into that tower. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But one day, you'll let your guard down. And we'll be there. Is that what you want for your son? Looking over your shoulder for the rest of his life? Or worse, disappear, Camilla. Or the next time. We won't miss." The line clicked dead. She stood there, frozen. We let the boy live. They were right. She was the weakness. She was the liability. As long as she was here, as long as she was tied to Dante, she and Noah would be targets. And Dante, he would die trying to protect them. She was the curse, not him. Her decision was instant. It was the agony of a mother. She scribbled a note, her hands shaking. "I'm sorry, it's the only way. I love you." She grabbed Noah, her purse, and the diaper bag. She went to the door. She looked at the 2 guards outside. "Mister, Moretti just called." She lied, her voice surprisingly steady. He said the threat is gone. He's sending me and Noah to a country house. He said you're to wait here for him." The guards looked at each other, confused. Dante's orders had been absolute. But she was the boss's woman. He said it was an emergency change of plans. She pressed, her heart hammering. He's testing you." It was the testing part that did it. They stepped aside. She got into the elevator, her fingerprint, which Dante had programmed in, giving her access. She wrote it down, her stomach in knots. She walked out the lobby, past the doorman who thought she was Dante's guest, and into the afternoon light. She was free. And she had just signed her own death warrant. She ran 3 blocks and hailed a taxi. "The main bus station, please, hurry." She sat in the back, holding Noah, sobbing silently. She had no money, save for the $200 in her wallet. She had no plan. She was just disappearing. The bus station was a cavern of gray light and desperation. It smelled of diesel fumes and stale coffee. She looked at the board. A bus was leaving for Chicago in 10 minutes. It was as good a place as any. She stood in line, her body numb, Noah fussy in her arms. She was at the front of the line, about to buy the ticket that would sever her life, when a cold, quiet voice spoke from directly behind her. "What do you think you're doing, Camilla?" She froze. The blood drained from her face. Slowly, she turned. Dante was standing there. He was not in his suit. He was in the clothes he had left in. He was not yelling. He was not angry. He looked hollow. His eyes were black with a disappointment so cold it was more terrifying than any rage. He looked at Noah, then at her, then at the ticket counter. He stepped closer. So close she could feel the cold rain on his jacket. He leaned in, his voice a low, devastating whisper that only she could hear. "I trusted you. Don't make me regret it." Camilla stood frozen in the cavernous, echoing bus station. The diesel fumes burned her nose, a stark, chemical smell that cut through her shock. Dante's voice was a blade in the dim light. "I trusted you." She turned slowly, her body rigid with a despair so deep it had gone numb. He stood there, not a foot away, his face carved from ice. The disappointment in his eyes was a physical blow, worse than any slap, worse than any bullet. It was the look of a man who had finally allowed himself to believe in something, only to watch it crumble in his hands. "Dante," she whispered, her voice breaking. Noah, sensing her terror, began to fuss, his small hand grabbing her hair. "You left this," he said. He held up the small, crumpled note she had left on the penthouse bed. "I'm sorry. I love you. You love me. So you run. You don't understand," she sobbed, the tears she had held back finally breaking free. I had to." "You had to," he repeated, his voice dangerously flat. "You had to run to a bus station with $200 and my son. You had to leave me after we... You had to make me regret it. They called." She cried, her voice rising, sharp with hysteria. The people in line turned to stare. "They called the room. A man. He said they'd let you live. They'd let Noah live. If I disappeared, he said I was the weakness. He said they'd get us. Maybe not today, but someday. He said they'd kill Noah." The ice in Dante's expression did not melt. It cracked. He stared at her, his mind visibly processing her words, the phone call, the threat. This was not a betrayal. This was a sacrifice. She was not running from him. She was running for him. The fury that had propelled him here, the cold black rage of abandonment, vanished, replaced by an agony so profound it stole his breath. He had failed. He had built a fortress of steel and glass, and the enemy had just walked through the front door with a telephone call. He called you," Dante said, the words rough. "I was protecting you," she whispered, her entire body shaking. "I was protecting him. I'm the one who's cursed. I'm the one who destroys things. I couldn't let them hurt you because of me." He closed the distance between them in one step. He did not yell. He did not kiss her. He simply took Noah from her arms. He settled his son against his own chest, Noah's cries immediately quieting as he recognized the familiar, steady heartbeat. Dante looked at Camilla, his dark eyes raw, stripped of all pretense, all control. "You were wrong," he said, his voice thick. "You were protecting no one. You were ending us." He reached out his free hand and wrapped it around her arm. His grip was firm, grounding. "You don't get to make that decision. You don't get to die for me. You don't get to run. Not anymore." He looked at her, and the ice was gone, replaced by a fire that burned away her fear. "Next time," he said, his voice a low, lethal vow. "They call? They threaten. You come to me. You don't run. You stand with me. We fight together." He did not wait for an answer. He pulled her against his side, shielding her and his son with his own body, and steered her out of the bus station, away from the smell of diesel and desperation, and back into the rain. The trap was set 3 nights later. Dante had used the wounded man his men had captured, the one from the fire escape, as a bargaining chip. He sent a message to Antonio Valenti, the rival boss, a meeting, just the 2 of them, to discuss terms, a truce. He made himself the bait, just as he had planned. He chose an abandoned shipping warehouse on the river, a place of rust and shadows. Camila was back in the penthouse, but she was not a prisoner. She was a partner. Before he left, he had kissed her, a deep, bruising kiss that tasted of promises and fear. "The men are outside the door," he'd said. "I know," she replied, her hand on his chest. "This time, they're to keep them out, not to keep me in." He had almost smiled. "Fight together." Now. He stood in the center of the cavernous warehouse, the only light coming from the dirty skylights high above. Rain hammered on the tin roof. Antonio Valenti walked in, flanked by 4 men. He was a small, arrogant man with a peacock's strut. "Moretti," Valenti sneered. "Alone. I heard you'd gone soft, the waitress and the kid. A real liability." "I'm here," Dante said, his voice echoing in the empty space. "Let's talk." "Talk?" Valenti laughed. "There's no talk. You're finished. You've been so busy playing house, you didn't even see—" "See what?" Dante asked. "See my men on the catwalks? See the exits being sealed?" Valenti's face froze. "What?" Dante gave a single, sharp whistle. The warehouse exploded. It was not a firefight, it was an execution. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness from every angle. Valenti's men were cut down before they could even raise their weapons. It was precise. It was brutal. It was over in 10 seconds. Valenti, screaming in terror, fumbled for his own gun, but one of his men, wounded and desperate, was still on his feet. He raised his pistol, not at Dante, but at Leo, who was stepping out from behind a steel pillar, his own weapon drawn. "Leo!" Dante roared. There was no time. Dante did not think. He moved. He shoved his consigliere, his oldest friend, hard, pushing him back into the shadows. A shot cracked through the air. Deafeningly loud. Dante felt it, a white-hot, tearing pain in his left shoulder. It felt like being hit with a burning hammer. The force of it spun him around, and his legs buckled. He went down, landing hard on the concrete floor, his vision blurring. He heard another shot, and the man who had shot him was silent. "Dante!" Leo's voice was sharp with a panic Dante had never heard. Leo was at his side, tearing open Dante's jacket. Boss, stay with me." Dante grunted, the pain a nova in his shoulder. Is he down?" "Valenti is down." "They're all down. It's over," Leo said, his hands pressing hard on the wound. "We've got you. Medics are on the way." "No," Dante gasped, the word tasting like copper. "No hospital. Get Alessi and Leo. Get me my phone. Call Camilla. Tell her I'm coming home. Tell her I'm okay." Camilla paced the penthouse, a lioness in a cage. When the call finally came, it was not from Dante. It was from Leo. "He's okay," Leo said, his voice strained. He took a hit in the shoulder, but he's okay. He's stubborn as a mule. We're bringing him to the private clinic, not the hospital. He's asking for you." Camilla's world tilted. She grabbed Noah from his crib, threw on her coat, and ran. The clinic was a sterile, private wing of a downtown medical building that Dante apparently owned. She burst into the waiting room, Noah on her hip, her heart a cold, hard stone in her chest. Leo was there, his suit stained with his boss's blood. He stood when he saw her. "He's in surgery," Leo said. "Alessi is with him. It looks clean. It missed the artery. He's strong. He's a fool," Camilla whispered, sinking into a chair. She held Noah, rocking him, her body numb. She waited. For hours. It was the pharmacy all over again, the same cold knot of fear, the same desperate, silent prayers. But this time, it was not for her son. It was for the man who had become her world. The door opened. Dr. Alessi, the woman who had first come to her apartment, walked out, pulling off a surgical mask. She looked exhausted, but she smiled. "He's stable," she said. "He's awake, and he's already complaining about the anesthetic. You can see him, but just for a minute." Camilla practically ran into the room. He was pale, his skin almost gray against the white pillows. His left arm was heavily bandaged and in a sling, and an IV was taped to his other hand. But his eyes were open, and they were on her. She rushed to his bedside, Noah still in her arms. "You idiot," she sobbed, the tears she had held back finally streaming down her face. "You stupid, arrogant, reckless." She buried her face in his good shoulder, her body shaking with relief. I thought. She felt his hand, the one with the IV, come up and stroke her hair. He was weak, but his touch was firm. "Hey," he murmured, his voice rough. She looked up, her face wet, her eyes blurry. A faint smile touched his lips. "You still owe me a first date." Months later, Camila woke to the sound of laughter. Sunlight, thick and warm, was pouring into a bedroom she did not recognize from her old life. It was a large, airy apartment in a historic brownstone, a place she had chosen. It was filled with light, soft rugs, and the scent of baking bread. It was a home. She sat up, listening. The laughter came again, high-pitched and breathless, mixed with a deep, familiar rumble. She threw on a silk robe, a gift from Dante, and walked down the hall. The kitchen was a mess of flour and eggshells. Dante was at the stove, a spatula in his hand, attempting to make pancakes. He was wearing gray sweatpants, his feet bare, and his left shoulder, now just a network of faded scars, was perfectly fine. Perched on those strong shoulders was Noah. He was 17 months old, his dark hair a wild mess, his small hands tangled in Dante's. He was shrieking with laughter as Dante flew him around the kitchen island. "And the airplane lands now," Dante said, setting Noah gently on the counter. "Again," Noah demanded. "Again." Dante agreed, but first, the boss needs his coffee. Camila leaned against the doorframe, her heart so full it ached. This was her life. This was the man who had executed a rival gang in a warehouse, now covered in flour and negotiating with a toddler. He saw her. His smile, no longer rare, lit his entire face. It was a smile that was just for her. "Good morning," he said, his voice soft. "Morning," she replied, walking toward him. She kissed Noah's sticky cheek, then kissed Dante, a slow, deep kiss that tasted of coffee and maple syrup. "Pancakes?" he asked against her lips. "They're burning," she murmured. "I know." He did not let her go. He just held her, with Noah babbling happily between them. He rested his forehead against hers. "I have something for you," he whispered. "More pancakes? Better." He reached into the pocket of his sweatpants and pulled out a small, black velvet box. Camilla's breath caught. "Dante," she whispered. He did not get down on one knee. It was not his style. He just opened the box, his dark eyes never leaving hers. Inside were 2 rings. One was a large, stunning, pear-shaped diamond that glittered in the morning light. The other was a small, simple, perfect gold band. "I know," he said, his voice thick, "that I'm not the man you ever thought you'd be with. I'm not safe, and my world is complicated. But it's not a curse. Not anymore. Not with you." He touched the large diamond. "This one is for you, because you are the queen of my world." Then his finger brushed the small, simple band. "And this one is for him, a promise that I am not his father, but I will be his dad, that I am not leaving, that we are a family, that I will spend the rest of my life protecting you both." Tears were streaming down Camilla's face. She could not speak. She just looked at him, at this terrifying, gentle, violent, tender man who had saved her in every way a person could be saved. "Marry me, Camilla," he said. "Rebuild with me. For real this time." She cried, and she nodded, a frantic, happy motion. "Yes, yes." He slid the diamond onto her finger. It fit perfectly. He then took the small band and slipped it onto a chain he pulled from his pocket, fastening it around Noah's neck. "A family," Dante said. He kissed her, and she kissed him back, pouring all the love, all the fear, and all the peace she had finally earned into it. Noah giggled, patting both their cheeks. Camilla rested her head on Dante's shoulder, her hand on her son's, her new ring feeling heavy and real on her finger. She looked at the man she loved, in the home they had built, and she finally understood. She whispered, "I texted the wrong man, or maybe fate finally answered." Thank you so much for listening to our story. We would love to know where you are listening from, so drop a comment and say hello. If you love this story, do not forget to subscribe to Mafia Romance Stories for more. And please let us know what you thought of Camilla and Dante's journey. We will see you next time.